A waitress, drowning in debt and abused by her boss, decides to give her only meal of the day to a homeless man sitting in the rain. She had no idea her small act of kindness was a secret test. The man she shared her sandwich with wasn't homeless. He was Alexander Kendrick, a reclusive billionaire testing the city's businesses before a massive buyout. What she did next, and the way she handled her tyrannical boss, didn't just get her a new job, it changed her entire life and delivered the most satisfying karmic justice you will ever see. The smell of stale coffee and industrial-grade bleach was the first thing that hit Sophie Brennan every morning at 5 a.m. It was a smell she associated with survival. The Bluebonnet Diner, planted stubbornly on the edge of 6th Street in Austin, was a relic of a bygone era, and Sophie was one of its fixtures. At 26, Sophie felt like she was 40. She'd graduated with honors and a degree in hospitality management, dreaming of running a boutique hotel, maybe something with charm and character. Instead, she was running plates of burnt hash browns and watery eggs, her degree gathering dust in a folder under her bed. Her reality was a cramped, third-floor walk-up apartment with peeling paint and a radiator that rattled like a dying animal. The real weight, however, wasn't the apartment. It was the medical bills. Her mother, her only family, was in long-term care at St. David's after a debilitating stroke, and the insurance barely covered a fraction of the cost. Every dollar Sophie earned, every meager tip she pocketed, went into a black hole of co-pays and prescription costs. This morning, the rain was coming down in cold, angry sheets, plastering trash against the diner's plate glass windows. Sophie's shoes, which she'd tried to patch with duct tape, were already soaked through. A shiver ran up her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "Brennan, you're 2 minutes late!" That voice, it cut through the clatter of plates and the hiss of the grill like acid. Frank Gerard, the diner's manager, was standing by the POS system, his cheap polyester tie already stained with coffee. He was a small, bitter man whose only pleasure in life seemed to be wielding his tiny kingdom of laminated menus and lukewarm coffee. "Sorry, Frank," Sophie mumbled, tying her apron. The bus was running behind. "Excuses," he snapped, not looking up from his clipboard. "The specials sign is misspelled. Again. Are you incapable of spelling cholesterol?" "I didn't write the sign this morning, Frank. That was Brenda on the night shift." "Don't pass the buck, Brennan. You're the opener. You see a mistake, you fix it. Is that too complex? Or did that fancy college degree of yours not cover basic initiative?" Sophie bit the inside of her cheek. "Taste blood. Hold your tongue." She needed this job. She needed the paycheck that was already 3/4 spent before it even hit her account. "I'll fix it right now." She grabbed the chalk markers, her hands trembling slightly. It wasn't just the insult, it was the fatigue. She'd worked a double yesterday, covering for another server who had quit mid-shift. Frank had thrown a plate at him. She had gotten home at midnight, spent an hour sorting through her mother's Medicare statements, and fallen asleep in her clothes for 3 hours. The diner was slowly filling up. The usual suspects: construction workers nursing thermoses, bleary-eyed students, and a few lost tourists. Sophie put on her diner smile, a carefully constructed mask of polite efficiency. "Morning, Gary. The usual," she said to a regular, forcing warmth into her voice. "You know it, sunshine," the man grunted, not looking up from his paper. For the next 4 hours, Sophie was a machine. She navigated the narrow spaces between tables, balanced impossible stacks of plates, refilled coffees before they were empty, and absorbed Frank Gerard's constant, grating criticism. "Brennan, Table 4 has been waiting on their check for 5 minutes." It had been 1 minute. "Brennan, You used too much milk in that latte. That comes out of your tips. Brennan, smile. You look like your dog just died. It's bad for business. Her stomach growled, a hollow, aching protest. She hadn't eaten since a handful of crackers the night before. Her designated lunch break was at 10 hours a.m. She glanced at the clock. 9:58 a.m. 2 more minutes. Her lunch was the same as always. Half a cheese sandwich, the bread slightly stale, and a small, bruised apple. It was all she could afford to pack. She looked forward to those 15 minutes in the damp, smelly break room more than anything else in the day. At 10 a.m. on the dot, she started to untie her apron. "Where do you think you're going?" Gerard's voice snagged her. "It's my break, Frank." 10 a.m. "Look at this place," he sneered, gesturing to the half-empty diner. "We're slammed." "There are 3 tables, Frank, and Brenda is here. Brenda can't handle a rush, and you," he said, jabbing a finger at her, "you'll take your break when I say you can. Table 7 just sat down. They look important. Don't mess it up." Sophie's shoulders slumped. She tied the apron back on. The hunger was a sharp pain now, making her feel dizzy. She looked at table 7. It was just a couple in matching rain ponchos. She grabbed a pitcher of water and walked over, the smile pasted back on her face. "Welcome to the Bluebonnet. Can I start you off with some coffee?" She could feel Frank's eyes on her back from across the room. He was watching her, waiting for her to fail. The pressure was suffocating. Every action, every word was a performance to save the job that was barely saving her. The grinding, relentless pressure was her entire world, and she had no idea that in 10 minutes that world was about to crack wide open. The rain shifted from a steady downpour to a violent, wind-driven assault. It hammered against the windows of the Bluebonnet diner, making the whole building feel like a ship caught in a storm. It was 10:30 a.m., and Sophie had finally been permitted by Frank Gerard to take her break. She grabbed her small brown paper bag lunch from the staff fridge, a fridge that held little more than expired condiments, and a half-eaten birthday cake for a busboy who'd been fired weeks ago. She didn't even bother going to the break room. She just wanted a breath of air, even if it was damp. She pushed open the heavy glass door and huddled under the diner's narrow, leaking awning. That's when she saw him. He was sitting on a low brick wall that separated the diner's parking lot from the alley. He was completely exposed to the elements, his back hunched against the wind. He wore an old, faded flannel shirt under a torn, canvas-style work jacket that was soaked through. His jeans were ripped at the knee, and his work boots looked like they were separating from their soles. He had a greying, unkempt beard, and his hair was matted to his head by the rain. He wasn't asking for money. He was just sitting there, staring at the ground, looking defeated. Sophie watched him for a moment. Most people on 6th Street asking for a handout had a certain practiced energy. This man just looked lost and cold, so incredibly cold. Just as she was about to turn away, the diner door swung open again, banging against the wall. Frank Gerard stepped out, holding a dripping trash bag. "Hey!" Gerard yelled at the man. The man flinched, looking up slowly. "You can't loiter here. Get lost." The man didn't respond. He just looked at Gerard with tired eyes. "What, are you deaf?" Gerard took a step closer. I said, "Beat it. You're scaring off the customers. We're not a shelter. Go on, get." The man slowly, painfully, pushed himself to his feet. His knees seemed to lock, and he winced. He didn't say a word, just started to shuffle away, limping slightly. Gerard watched him go, then tossed the trash bag into the dumpster with a grunt of satisfaction. "Vagrants. They're a plague." He looked at Sophie. "What are you staring at? Your break is 15 minutes, Brennan, not 16. And stay off your phone." He went back inside, letting the door slam shut. Sophie's stomach twisted. The hunger was still there, a dull ache, but it was eclipsed by a sudden, hot wave of shame. She looked at her brown bag, half a cheese sandwich and an apple. It was barely enough for her, let alone 2 people. She looked down the street. The man had only made it about 20 feet. He had stopped and was leaning against a light pole, his head bowed against the rain. "Don't be stupid, Sophie." The voice in her head was pragmatic. "You need that food. You have 8 more hours on your feet. You're dizzy already." But then she saw her mother's face in her mind. Her mother, who, even when they had nothing, would always make an extra plate for a neighbor who had forgotten to go to the store. "Damn it," Sophie whispered. She tucked her hair behind her ears, pulled her thin cardigan tighter, and jogged out from under the awning into the freezing rain. "Sir, excuse me." The man turned, startled. His eyes were a surprisingly clear, piercing blue. He looked confused, as if expecting another verbal assault. "Hi," Sophie said, stopping a few feet away. The rain was already soaking her apron. I saw my manager yelling at you. I'm so sorry about that. He's a man who enjoys his work," the man finished, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. Sophie managed a weak smile. "You could say that." She hesitated, then held out the brown paper bag. "It's not much, but you look like you haven't eaten, and you're soaked." The man stared at the bag, then at her face. He didn't move to take it. "You're on your break," he stated. It wasn't a question. "That's your lunch. It's fine. I ate a big breakfast." It was a clumsy, obvious lie. Her stomach chose that exact moment to let out a loud, betraying growl. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of the man's mouth. "A very big breakfast, it sounds like." Sophie blushed crimson. "Okay, so I didn't. But please take it. I can't stand. Just take it." He continued to study her, his gaze unnervingly intense. It wasn't the vacant look she expected. It was analytical. "You work in there?" he said, nodding toward the diner. "For him?" "For now," Sophie said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "It pays the bills. Mostly. Please." He finally, slowly, reached out and took the bag. His hands were calloused and rough. "Thank you," he said. He didn't open it. He just held it. "My name is Alex." "Sophie. Look, Alex, you should get out of this rain. There's a public library about 4 blocks that way. They'll let you sit inside and warm up." "And you?" he asked. "You're soaked now, too." "Comes with the territory," she said with a shrug. "I've got to get back to work. My boss is... well, he's Frank." "Frank," Alex repeated, tasting the name. "He doesn't seem to value his employees, especially the ones who give away their lunch." "He doesn't value much of anything except the sound of the cash register," Sophie said. She started to back away. "Enjoy the... well, it's just a sandwich, but I hope it helps." "Wait," Alex said. His voice had a sudden note of authority that made her stop. "Why do you stay?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "A person like you, bright, clearly compassionate. You stay in a place that's killing you, working for a man like Frank." "Why?" Sophie felt a sudden, defensive sting. "You don't know anything about me. I have responsibilities. It's not that simple." "It never is," he agreed, his gaze softening. "But that degree on your wall, I'm guessing it's not in diner management." Sophie froze. Her blood ran cold. How do you know about that?" Alex gave a slight, ambiguous gesture. "A good guess. You have the vocabulary of someone who's spent time in a university library." Sophie stared at him, a flicker of unease mixing with her pity. Who was this guy? He was articulate, perceptive. It didn't fit the picture. The diner door opened again. "Brennan, break's over. Get in here." Gerard's voice was a bullhorn. "I have to go," Sophie said, rattled. "Sophie," Alex said, and she turned back. "You did a good thing. A very rare thing. Don't let that place." He nodded at the diner. "Take that out of you." She nodded, speechless, and ran back through the rain, her stomach aching with hunger and her mind spinning with a strange, unsettling curiosity. She got back to the line just as Gerard was hanging up the phone. "That was your last warning, Brennan," he hissed. "You're soaked, you smell like wet dog, and you were a minute late. One more screw-up today, and you're gone. I don't care about your sob story. You're replaceable. You're all replaceable." Sophie just nodded, her hair dripping onto the linoleum. "Yes, Frank." As she passed the window to grab a coffee pot, she glanced outside. The brick wall was empty. The man named Alex had vanished, gone as quickly as he'd appeared, leaving only the rain and a profound sense of mystery. The rest of the day was a blur of misery. The hunger, which had been a dull ache, sharpened into a nauseating, light-headed wave. Every time Sophie bent over to clear a table, the room swam. She survived on lukewarm water from the server's station and the sheer, desperate need to keep her job. Frank Gerard was relentless. He seemed to have sensed her vulnerability and, like a shark, was drawn to the blood in the water. He accidentally tripped her as she was carrying a tray of sodas, sending plastic cups and ice scattering across the floor. "Clean it up, Brennan. You're a hazard," he barked as the other customers stared. She spent 10 minutes on her hands and knees, sopping up sticky soda with a filthy rag, her cheeks burning with humiliation. Every fibre of her being screamed at her to stand up, to throw the rag in his smug face, and to walk out that door. But she couldn't. She thought of the flashing red numbers on her mother's latest bill from St. David's. 14,1 till $800. That was just their portion. She thought of the eviction notice she'd found taped to her apartment door last week, which she'd barely managed to stave off with a partial payment. Walking out wasn't an option. It was a luxury she couldn't afford. The man, Alex, kept creeping into her thoughts. His eyes. They hadn't been desperate. They had been assessing. And how had he known about her degree? She hadn't mentioned it. She didn't have it hanging on her apartment wall. It was in a folder. A good guess. That felt too easy. What if he wasn't homeless? What if he was something else? A private investigator? A cop? She mentally scanned her recent past. She hadn't done anything wrong. Her life was a boring, monotonous loop of work and worry. Her suspicion grew. He was too clean. Not his clothes, but his language. His grammar was perfect. A man who enjoys his work. Executive-level empathy. People struggling with homelessness often had a different, more practical cadence. This man sounded like a professor. The thought was unsettling. Had she been tested? But for what? By whom? It made no sense. She pushed the thought away. She was just overtired and starving. He was just a very articulate, down-on-his-luck man. The encounter was over. She was wrong. It happened the next day. The rain had cleared, replaced by a weak, watery sunlight. The morning rush had been manageable, and Frank Gerard had been mysteriously absent, locked in his office on a phone call, his voice low and angry. Around 11:30 a.m., the bell above the diner door jingled. Sophie, wiping down the counter, called out her standard greeting without looking up. "Welcome to the Bluebonnet. Be right with—" She stopped. Her hand, holding the rag, froze mid-air. Standing just inside the door was Alex. But it wasn't the same man. The torn jacket and flannel were gone. He was wearing a simple, dark grey quarter-zip sweater, clean, dark wash jeans, and new, clean leather boots. His hair was trimmed, his beard was gone, revealing a strong jawline and a face that was clearly used to making decisions. He looked powerful. He still had the same piercing blue eyes, but now they were operating at full strength. He wasn't a customer. He was an executive on his day off. Sophie's heart hammered against her ribs. She felt a cold dread. Was he here to complain, to say she'd insulted him? He walked past the "Please wait to be seated" sign and sat directly at her counter, in the section Frank always yelled at her to keep clear for to-go orders. "Hello, Sophie," he said. His voice was the same gravelly rumble, but it was clearer now, smoother. "Alex," she whispered, clutching the rag. "What? What are you doing here?" "You recommended the coffee," he said, gesturing to the pot behind her. "I thought I'd try it. May I?" Of course." Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped the mug. She poured the coffee, her mind racing. "Who is he? Who is he?" "And," he continued, watching her pour, "I wanted to return this." He reached into the pocket of his sweater and pulled out a small, white envelope. He slid it across the counter. "What is this?" "Open it." She wiped her damp hands on her apron and carefully tore open the seal. Inside was a stack of bills. She fanned them. 50s, hundreds. She counted. $1,000. Sophie gasped, dropping the envelope as if it were on fire. I can't take this. What is this? I don't understand." "It's a repayment," he said calmly, taking a sip of the coffee. He winced slightly. "You were right. It's robust." "A repayment? For half a sandwich? Alex, this is crazy. I can't accept this." "You called it an investment. You said it pays the bills, mostly. I'm just offering a return on that investment. You invested in a human being. It's the most volatile stock there is. Yours paid off." "No," Sophie said, pushing the envelope back toward him. Her integrity, the one thing Frank hadn't managed to break, flared up. "I didn't give you my lunch for money. I gave it to you because you were hungry." "I know," he said, his blue eyes locking on hers. "That's why it's worth so much. Please, take it. Use it for those bills you mentioned." "How do you know?" She stopped. "You heard me talking to Frank." "I hear a lot of things," he said ambiguously. "Sophie, you're in a bad spot. There is no shame in accepting help that is freely offered. This isn't charity. It's a transaction. Kindness for kindness." The bell on the door jingled again. This time it was Frank, storming out of his office, his face a blotchy, furious red. "Brennan, I told you to keep this counter clear. Who is this?" He stopped, his gaze landing on the man's expensive sweater and clean-cut appearance. His entire demeanor shifted, like a snake shedding its skin. The acidic contempt vanished, replaced by a greasy, fawning smile. "Sir, welcome to the Blue Bonnet. I'm Frank Gerard, the manager. I'm so sorry. My server should have seated you at a proper booth." He shot Sophie a look of pure venom. "Brennan, get this man a menu. And more coffee. This is probably cold." "It's fine," Alex said, his voice flat. He didn't look at Frank. He was still looking at Sophie. "Sophie is my server, and I'm just fine right here." Frank was taken aback. "Oh, of course. Well, Sophie, move. Get back to your tables." He turned back to Alex. "Is everything to your satisfaction, Mr. Kendrick?" Alex said, his eyes never leaving Sophie's. "Alexander Kendrick." The name meant nothing to Sophie. It clearly meant nothing to Frank, who just nodded, his smile fixed. "Well, Mr. Kendrick, a pleasure to have you. Anything you need, you just let me know. Anything at all." "I will," Alexander said. "I'm just having a conversation with Sophie. If you don't mind." The dismissal was polite, but absolute. Frank, realizing he was being shut out by a wealthy-looking customer, bristled but backed off. "Right, of course. Brennan, get back to work when you're done." He stalked away, radiating fumes. Sophie quickly pushed the envelope back toward Alexander. "Please," she whispered, her voice frantic. "He'll see. He'll think I'm taking tips I didn't earn. He'll fire me. Please, I can't take it." Alexander looked at the envelope, then at her terrified face. He nodded slowly, picking it up. "I apologize. I've misjudged the situation." He tucked the envelope away. Sophie let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Thank you. I have to get back to work." "One more thing," he said. He pulled a slim silver pen and a business card from his pocket. He wrote something on the back of the card and slid it across the counter, face down. "This is not money," he said quietly. "It's a different kind of currency. Don't let Frank see it. Don't look at it until you are home. And Sophie, I strongly suggest you find a new place to work." "I'm trying," she whispered. "It's not that easy." "I know." He stood up, placing a $100 bill on the counter for the $3 coffee. "This," he said, tapping the bill, "is for the coffee. The rest is your tip. That you earned." Before she could protest, he turned and walked out. The bell jingled, and he was gone. Sophie snatched the bill and the business card, her hands shaking. She shoved them deep into her apron pocket, just as Frank came barreling back. $100 tip?" he sneered, having seen the exchange from afar. "What did you do? Promise him a happy ending?" "He just liked the coffee, Frank," Sophie said, her voice hollow. "Yeah, right, that 100. That goes into the house pool. You didn't earn that. He was tipping the establishment." "Frank, no, that's my—" "Or you're fired," he said, his eyes dead. "Your choice. Hand it over." Tears of rage and helplessness stung her eyes. Slowly, she pulled the crisp $100 bill from her pocket and slapped it into his waiting hand. "Good girl," he said, patting her on the shoulder. "Now, table 3 needs a refill. Hop to it." As he walked away, pocketing the cash, Sophie's hand strayed to her other pocket. He hadn't seen the business card. It was still there. A small, stiff rectangle of cardboard that felt impossibly heavy. It was all she had left of the bizarre, humiliating encounter. The rest of the week was a special kind of hell. Frank Gerard, having tasted blood with the $100 tip, was on a power trip. He was riding Sophie relentlessly, piling extra work on her, cutting her hours, and then complaining she wasn't making her shifts. He was trying to make her quit. If she quit, she couldn't claim unemployment. Sophie was running on fumes. The encounter with Alexander Kendrick had left her rattled. She had looked at the card when she got home. It was simple, thick, and made of a heavy, linen finish cardstock. Alexander Kendrick, CEO, Kendrick Global Holdings. Below that, a single phone number with a New York area code. On the back, in that clean, strong handwriting, it just said, "A person of integrity is a rare find. They deserve a better environment." She had Googled the name. Her cracked Samsung phone screen had lit up with a blinding array of results. Alexander Kendrick, the reclusive baron of hospitality, the ghost of Wall Street. He was a multi-billionaire, a man who owned a portfolio of the world's most exclusive 5-star hotels, the Sovereign Collection, known for its 6-star service and impossible luxury. He also owned vast amounts of commercial real estate, including, she'd read in a Forbes article, distressed urban properties. He was notorious for disappearing. He would go undercover, as the articles put it, to test his own hotels, or to scope out new acquisitions. He'd been photographed working as a bellhop in his own Dubai hotel and as a dishwasher in a restaurant he was planning to buy. He hadn't been homeless. He had been auditing. He was auditing her, or the diner, or Frank. This realization didn't make her feel better. It made her feel worse. She felt like a specimen in a jar. He had watched her. He'd seen her humiliation, her desperation. He'd offered her $1,000, and she'd been too proud or too scared of Frank to take it. And then Frank had taken the $100 tip anyway. She had failed the test. She had lost on all fronts. She had the billionaire's private number in her pocket. But what could she possibly do with it? Call him. "Hi, Mr. Billionaire, sir. Remember me, the pathetic waitress? My boss stole my tip. Can I have that $1,000 now?" The thought was mortifying. She couldn't. So she put her head down and tried to survive. The breaking point came on a Friday. Friday was deposit day. Frank always handled the week's cash deposit, bundling it for the armored car pickup. He was in his office all morning, counting, the door locked. Around 1 p.m. the diner was quiet. Sophie was refilling salt shakers, her mind a million miles away, calculating if she could pay the electric bill and her mother's new prescription. Frank burst out of his office, his face pale and slick with sweat. He looked genuinely terrified. "Brennan!" he yelled, his voice cracking. "Get in here, now!" Sophie's stomach dropped. This was a new kind of energy. This wasn't his usual predatory bullying. This was panic. She walked into the tiny, cluttered office. The old metal desk was covered in receipts and cash bundles. "Where is it?" he demanded. "Where is what, Frank? Don't play dumb with me. The deposit bag, the main bag. Where is it? What are you talking about? I've been on the floor all day. You've been in here." "It's gone," he whispered, his eyes wide. "The bag for the bank. It's gone. There was $4,000 in it." "What?" Sophie felt the blood drain from her face. "Frank, I never touched it. I didn't even know it was here." "Lies!" he suddenly roared, his panic finding its familiar target, her. "You're the only other one with a key to this office." This was true. As the opening server, she had a key to get the register drawer in the morning, but she was supposed to leave the office unlocked for him when he arrived. "Frank, I haven't been in your office since 5 a.m., Sophie pleaded. "You saw me on the floor. Ask Brenda. Ask the cook." "Oh, I will," he sneered. But the fear was still there. He was cornered, and he was lashing out. "Brenda is an idiot, and the cook barely speaks English. You've been complaining about money all week. Your mother, all those bills. Don't you dare bring my mother into this," Sophie snapped, her own fear replaced by a sudden, cold anger. "You took it," Frank yelled, jabbing a finger at her. "You saw me counting. You waited until I went to the bathroom. You used your key, and you stole the deposit." "That's insane, Frank. I did not. You probably misplaced it." "I did not misplace it," he screamed. He lunged at her, grabbing the front of her apron. "Give it back, you little thief. Give it back now, and I'll just fire you. If you don't, I'm calling the police. Get your hands off me." Sophie shoved him, hard. He stumbled back, tripping over a box of K-cups. He stared at her, breathing hard. The mask of the bully was gone. He looked pathetic. And then a slow, cunning smile spread across his face. It was the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. "Oh, you're going to regret that, Brennan. Assaulting your manager. On top of the theft." "What theft? There is no theft." "There is," he said, his voice dropping to a calm, sinister level. "I'm short $4,000. You're the only one with access. You've been complaining about being broke. It's an open and shut case." "You're framing me," Sophie whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. You lost it. Or you took it. And you're framing me." Frank's smile widened. "My word against the sad little waitress with the sick mummy and the mountain of debt. Who do you think they'll believe?" I'm calling Mr. Patel," Sophie said, naming the diner's owner, a man who only showed up once a month to look at the books. "Go ahead," Frank laughed. "Patel loves me. I'm the one who keeps this rat trap running. You? You're just another piece of disposable trash." He picked up the phone on his desk. "You have until the end of your shift to find that money and put it back, Sophie. 5 o'clock. If it's not on my desk, I'm dialing 911 and having you arrested for grand larceny." "Frank, you can't." 5 o'clock, he repeated. "Now get out of my office, and don't even think about running. I've already got your address." Sophie stumbled out of the office, her entire body shaking so hard she had to lean against the wall. $4,000. It was a death sentence. She didn't have $4. An arrest, a criminal record. She would lose this job. She would never get another one. She would lose her apartment, her mother. She was trapped. Gerard had her pinned. He had either lost the money and was using her as a scapegoat, or he had stolen it himself and was using her as his exit plan. Either way, she was finished. She fled to the staff bathroom, locked the flimsy door, and collapsed against the sink, dry sobbing in pure, unadulterated terror. Her hands were shaking. She fumbled in her apron pocket, pulling out her phone. It was 1:15 p.m. She had less than 4 hours. Her fingers brushed against the business card. Alexander Kendrick, CEO, Kendrick Global Holdings. She stared at the name. A billionaire. A man who dealt in a world so far removed from hers, it was science fiction. What could he possibly do? But more importantly, what other choice did she have? Her hands were still shaking, but a different emotion was taking over. Righteous fury. Frank was not going to pin this on her. He was not going to destroy her life to cover his own tracks. She took a deep, raggedy breath. She had one call. One impossible, desperate, 1,000,000-to-1 shot. She unlocked her phone and dialed the New York area code. It rang twice. Sophie expected a robotic assistant, a labyrinth of automated menus, or a stern executive assistant. A voice answered, and it was the same gravelly rumble from the diner. "Kendrick." He answered his own phone. The sheer, uncomplicated power of it almost made Sophie hang up. "Mr. Kendrick," she whispered, her voice trembling. I'm sorry to... This is Sophie. Sophie Brennan, from the Bluebonnet Diner in Austin." There was a pause, not of confusion, but of focus. "Sophie, I was wondering if you'd call." "You were." "I was. Your manager, Frank, stole your tip. I assumed that would not be the end of his managerial style. What has he done now?" The calm, direct acknowledgement of her situation broke the dam. The words came tumbling out in a frantic, tearful rush. "He's framing me. He says the bank deposit is missing, $4,000, and he's blaming me. He says I'm the only one with a key, and that I'm in debt and he's going to call the police at 5 o'clock. He's going to have me arrested. Mr. Kendrick, I swear I didn't do it. I've never stolen anything in my life. I think he took it. He's trying to ruin me." She finished, gasping for breath. The silence on the other end of the line deafening. "Sophie," Alexander said, his voice perfectly calm. It was the calm of a surgeon, not a friend. It was terrifying and comforting all at once. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. First, breathe. Panicking is what he wants." Sophie tried to take a breath. It hitched in her chest. "Good. Now, what time is it in Austin?" It's 1:20 p.m., and he's calling the police at 5 or past p.m. Yes, That gives us more than enough time. I need you to do exactly as I say. Do not, under any circumstances, quit. Do not run. Do not engage with Frank any further. If he speaks to you, you say nothing. Go back to the floor. Go back? Yes. Go back and wipe down tables. Refill the salt shakers. Do your job. Act as normally as you possibly can. Can you do that for me? I think so. But what about 5 o'clock? He's going to call the police. He can certainly try, Alexander said, a note of cold iron entering his voice. I am aware of Mr. Gerard and of the Bluebonnet Diner. My team is already in Austin. They will be there long before 5. Your team? But what are they going to do? You just focus on your job, Sophie. Be polite. Be efficient. Be the employee you were when I first saw you. Let me handle Frank. But the money. The money is irrelevant. This is about Frank's actions. Now go. And, Sophie? Yes? You were right not to take the $1,000. It would have complicated things. You passed the test. Now let me show you what that means. The line clicked dead. Sophie stared at her phone. You passed the test. She felt a strange, cold calm settle over her. The terror was still there, but it was now beneath a layer of adrenaline and an impossible, flickering ember of hope. He had a team. In Austin. She splashed cold, gritty water on her face from the rusty tap. She looked in the mirror. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. She took a deep breath, straightened her apron, and unlocked the door. Frank was at the register, glaring at her. Took you long enough. Thinking about how you're going to pay me back? Sophie looked at him. She channeled the cold calm from Alexander's voice. Table 3 needs a refill, she said, and walked right past him. Frank was so surprised by her lack of a hysterical reaction that he was speechless for a moment. For the next 3 hours, Sophie Brennan was the best waitress in the world. She was a ghost of perfect efficiency. She refilled coffees. She took orders. She delivered plates. She smiled her plastic smile. All the while, her stomach was a knot of pure ice. She kept glancing at the clock. 2:09 p.m. 3:09 p.m. 4:09 p.m. Frank was getting agitated. He was pacing by his office, shooting her looks of pure hatred. Her calm was unnerving him. He wanted her to cry. He wanted her to beg. Her refusal to break his script was making him furious. 4:30 p.m. The diner was nearly empty. Just one old man nursing a coffee in a corner booth. 4:45 p.m. Frank stalked over to her. 15 minutes, you little thief. 15 minutes until your life is over. Sophie just wiped the counter. 4:50 p.m. The bell on the diner door jingled. It wasn't a team. It was 2 men. They were not what Sophie expected. They weren't bodyguards. They were dressed in unassuming, practical clothes, polos and slacks. They looked like accountants, or perhaps auditors. They walked directly to Frank. "Frank Gerard?" the taller one asked. "Yeah. What do you want? We're closing in 10. The man smiled, a thin, unpleasant expression. "We're not here to eat. We're from Consolidated Holdings. We're the auditors for Mr. Patel." Frank's face went white. "Auditors?" Patel didn't say anything about auditors. "He doesn't have to. It's in his loan agreement," the man said. He gestured to his partner, who was already walking toward Frank's office. "We're here to do a spot check of the books, effective immediately." "You can't do that," Frank yelped, moving to block the office door. You need a warrant. Or Mr. Patel. We've already spoken to Mr. Patel," the second man said, pausing. "He was very agreeable." "Now, if you'll excuse me," the first man said, and he gently but firmly moved Frank to the side and opened the office door. "This is harassment," Frank was sputtering. "I'm calling the owner." "Please do," the auditor said, pulling a small high-tech scanner from his briefcase. "While you do that, we'll just be looking at the last 6 months of deposit slips. And the security footage." "The security footage?" Frank's voice was a squeak. "Yes. The camera in your office. The one you pointed at the safe. It's been backing up to our cloud server for, about 72 hours now. Ever since Mr. Kendrick's first visit." Frank Gerard stopped moving. He stopped sputtering. All the color drained from his face, leaving it a pasty, sickly grey. He looked at Sophie, who was standing by the counter, holding a coffee pot. Her face was perfectly neutral. "You," Frank whispered at her. "You bitch." "What did you do?" Before Sophie could answer, the bell on the diner door jingled again. This time it wasn't an auditor. Alexander Kendrick walked in. He was wearing a deep navy blue suit that probably cost more than the entire diner. He was flanked by 2 other men who were clearly bodyguards. He didn't look at Frank. He didn't look at the auditors. He walked directly to the counter and looked at Sophie. "Miss Brennan," he said, his voice quiet but echoing in the silent diner. "You're late. We have a meeting to get to." Frank Gerard looked from Alexander Kendrick's bespoke suit to the auditors dismantling his office, and then to Sophie, who was still holding the coffee pot. The cognitive dissonance was so strong, he looked like he might have a stroke. "Kendrick," Frank stammered. You were the guy. The $100 tip. You." "I am," Alexander said, turning his attention to Frank for the first time. His blue eyes were not analytical now. They were arctic. "I'm the man whose tip you stole from your employee." It was a misunderstanding," Frank babbled. "The house." "The pool." "There is no house pool, Frank," the first auditor called from the office. "According to the employee manual, all tips are the property of the server. We have your signature on that." "But the missing money," Frank yelled, grasping for his last lifeline. "She stole it. The deposit, $4,000. I'm calling the police." He fumbled for his phone. "I wouldn't do that," Alexander said calmly. "And why not?" Frank sneered. "Because," Alexander said, "the police are already on their way, and they're not coming for her." As if on cue, the siren, distant at first, grew louder, stopping directly outside. 2 uniformed Austin police officers walked into the diner. "Frank Gerard?" one of them asked. Frank looked like a trapped animal. Yes, officer, thank God. This woman," he pointed a shaking finger at Sophie, "she stole $4,000 from my safe." The officer looked at Sophie, then at Alexander, then back to Frank. He sighed, as if this was already too much paperwork. "Sir, we're not here about that. We're here because a Mr. Patel, the owner of this establishment, has filed a complaint against you for embezzlement." "What?" Frank shrieked. "Patel, he wouldn't. He did," the second auditor said, walking out of the office, holding a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside it was a thick, stuffed envelope. "We found this in the ceiling panel above your desk. Funny, it looks just like a bank deposit bag. And just look at the timestamp on the footage of you putting it up there. 4:30 a.m., well before Miss Brennan even started her shift." The first officer nodded. "Mr. Gerard, we also have a report from a Mr. Kendrick detailing your long-term skimming of register receipts and forced tip pooling, which constitutes wage theft. We'll need you to come with us." Frank's entire world collapsed. His face crumpled. No. I was just borrowing it. I was going to pay it back. This place doesn't pay me enough. Patel is a cheapskate." "Tell it to the judge, pal," the officer said, pulling out handcuffs. "Frank Gerard, You are under arrest for grand larceny and embezzlement." As the officers cuffed him, Frank's eyes, wild and desperate, locked on Sophie. The hatred in them was pure. You did this! You and your billionaire! You... He lunged at her, but the officers yanked him back easily. They dragged him, sputtering and cursing, out of the diner and into the waiting patrol car. The diner was silent, save for the hum of the freezer and the dripping of the coffee pot Sophie was still, numbly, holding. The auditors were packing their briefcases. "We've got everything we need, Mr. Kendrick," the first one said. "We'll have the full report on your desk by Monday." "Thank you, gentlemen," Alexander said. They nodded and left. It was just Sophie and Alexander Kendrick, flanked by his 2 silent bodyguards, in the middle of the empty, grime-filled diner. Sophie's knees finally gave out. She slumped onto one of the counter stools, setting the coffee pot down with a clatter. He really did it," she whispered. "He stole it. He was going to let me go to jail for it." "Yes, he was," Alexander said. He sat on the stool next to her. One of his bodyguards discreetly picked up the coffee pot and put it back on the burner. How did you know?" Sophie asked, looking at him. "You said your team was here. You knew he was stealing before he framed me." "I did," Alexander nodded. "When I left here yesterday, after our conversation, I had my suspicions about Frank. But more than that, I had my suspicions about this diner. So I made a call." He gestured around. "The Blue Bonnet Diner is, on paper, owned by a Mr. Patel. What Mr. Patel doesn't advertise is that he leveraged his business 3 years ago to stay afloat. The entity that holds his debt, the company that really owns this building and everything in it, is Kendrick Global Holdings." Sophie stared at him. You own this diner. In a manner of speaking, I am effectively Frank's boss's boss's boss. When I visited the first time, in my undercover capacity, I saw a dozen critical failures, filthy premises, expired food, and a tyrannical abusive manager. I saw an employee, you, being systematically mistreated. I also saw that same employee perform an act of extraordinary compassion under duress. He continued, "When you gave me your lunch, you weren't just being kind. You were being brave. You were protecting a stranger from the same man who terrified you, all while you were physically suffering from hunger. That's not kindness, Sophie. That's character. That's executive-level integrity. So you sent the auditors?" "I did. They were supposed to come in next week for a quiet audit. But then you called. You told me Frank was accelerating his timeline, so I accelerated mine. And the 4,000. A classic exit scam," Alexander said with a shrug. He knew the audit was coming. Mr. Patel had to inform him this morning. It's procedure. Frank panicked. He stole the deposit, planning to blame you and disappear. Sophie shook her head, trying to process the sheer scale of it all. The homeless man on the wall wasn't just a billionaire. He was the owner. He hadn't just been testing her. He'd been investigating his own failing asset. "So," Sophie said, her voice small, "what happens now?" "Now?" Alexander stood up, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. "Now this diner is closed, permanently. It's a health code violation and a criminal enterprise." Sophie's heart sank. "Oh, so I'm still out of a job." Alexander Kendrick looked at her, and for the first time, a genuine, warm smile reached his eyes. "That," he said, "is where you are wrong. I told you we have a meeting. My jet is waiting at the airport. You, Miss Brennan, are coming with me." Sophie's mind couldn't compute. Your jet? A meeting? "Mr. Kendrick, I'm wearing a uniform that smells like fried onions. I have $14 in my bank account. I can't go anywhere." "I'm not asking," Alexander said. He gestured to one of his bodyguards. "This is Paul. He will escort you home. You have 1 hour to pack a bag for a week." He paused, his gaze softening. "While you do that, my associates are handling the details of your mother's care." Sophie froze, her heart stopping. "My mother?" "She's being transferred from St. David's to a private specialized neurological clinic in Houston, one of the best in the country. It's being handled by my company's concierge medical team. All costs will be covered." Sophie gripped the counter to stay upright, the words barely registering. You can't. Why?" "It's covered by our executive wellness program," Alexander said simply. "As a new employee, your family is, of course, included." "A new employee?" "That's the meeting," he said. "The one you're late for. We're flying to New York. Tomorrow morning, you will meet the board of operations for the Sovereign Collection, my hotel chain." "To do what?" she whispered. "Serve coffee?" "To help run it," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I didn't guess about your degree, Sophie. After our first meeting, I had my team run a background check. You have a 4.0 in hospitality management and a thesis on the integration of empathetic service in luxury markets. You have every qualification to be one of my top executives." But I'm a waitress." "You were a waitress," he corrected her. "You were forced into that corner. I'm not interested in what the world forced you to do. I'm interested in what you did when you were in that corner. You showed integrity and unbelievable grace under pressure. I can teach someone how to read a balance sheet. I can't teach them to have a soul." He checked his watch. "Go, Sophie. Pack your bag. Frank Gerard was right about one thing. You are replaceable." Sophie flinched. "You are," he continued, "a replaceable waitress, because you were never supposed to be one. You're a high-level executive, and you're about to start your real job." Sophie looked around the dingy diner one last time. She untied her dirty apron and left it on the counter. She didn't look back. Paul held the door of a black Mercedes, and she slid into the leather interior. As they pulled away, she saw Mr. Patel, the diner's nominal owner, arriving, wringing his hands as he talked to one of Alexander's auditors. Three months later, Sophie Brennan stood in the penthouse suite of the Sovereign Hotel, overlooking Central Park. She wore a sharp, custom-tailored suit. She was the new head of the Guest Empathy Division, a program she had designed from the ground up, and it was already revolutionizing their service. She had just gotten off the phone with her mother. The targeted therapy was working. Her mother had spoken her first clear sentence in a year. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Alexander. "Dinner, 8 p.m. The Roof. We're discussing the new London property. Welcome to the board, Sophie." She smiled, took a sip of her water, and got back to work. Sophie's story is a powerful reminder that the world is always watching. Not always in a bad way, but in the way that matters. Your true character isn't what you do when the boss is watching. It's what you do when you think no one is watching. It's how you treat the person you think can do nothing for you. Sophie gave away her last meal, not for a reward, but because it was the right thing to do. She faced down a tyrant, not because she was powerful, but because she had integrity. And in the end, she received a reward that wasn't just about money. It was about respect. It was about being seen for who she truly was. What do you think of Sophie's incredible journey? And what would you have done in her situation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story inspired you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And make sure you subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that will restore your faith in humanity.